Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Garden Time with Hannah. And I just want to show you a little bit about orchids and how to repot them. So these are all your regular orchid that you see in the store. They're a moth orchid is what sometimes people call them. But they are a Phalaenopsis orchid. And there's tons and tons of different kinds of orchids if you didn't know that. But I'm just going to go through a few of the steps of repotting orchids and just some things to look out for while you're repotting them. You should repot them as soon as possible after getting them. And chances are they're usually in flower. Then you need to wait until they're pretty much done flowering or, towards the end of their flower cycle. One more thing to note, one of these is mine and the other three are my grandma's because she loves orchids. And she has these Just Add Ice orchids. And it's literally says 3 cubes a week, and it's just simple as that. This is really not a good rule of thumb to go by. Maybe give it that water equivalent 3 times a week, but you never really want to give ice to your orchids because orchids are tropical plants. And more than anything is that they don't want to be frozen or, cold. So having that ice on the roots while the ice melts quickly, it's probably not the best idea. The best way to keep your orchid moist and wet is to soak it in a sink is what I do. Just, put it in the sink, soak it for a couple of minutes, and probably do it once a week, but, depending on where you live and, what potting medium you have, you may need to do it less or more than that. So let's get started. Okay, first, I've got water here. And I've got an orchid potting mix that it's pretty much just bark and charcoal. I'll show you a close-up in just a second. The charcoal is to, I don't remember all the uses it has now. It has a lot of uses. It's really great. If you find an orchid bark mixture with charcoal, definitely get it. The bark is what they're most naturally like. Like orchids naturally grow towards the tops of trees in pretty much on their roots, and their roots, these things here, these technically aren't their roots, I'll get into that in a second, but they connect themselves to the tree and then absorb the nutrients as it needs. But they're normally not in frozen climates, which is why you should add ice, and they're usually not in wet climates, which is why you should not use too much of the Spagnum Moss. Most orchids automatically, if you get them, they typically have Spagnum Moss in them. And I'll show you a close-up of this in a second. But this really is a horrible orchid, isn't it? These were my grandma's, and I'm repotting them for her. And I should have done it sooner, but, they have it in my house for about a month. Anyway, it's got Spagnum Moss in it, and it absorbs way too much moisture. And then actually, the roots here, I'll show you a close-up in a second, but these are not the full roots. The orchid roots is what's inside of this. So, I just got my new Fiskas for Christmas, these here, and they're amazing, but they're incredibly sharp, and I don't really want to skim the whole thing down, but it's got blades on the outside, so I don't know if I really like it, because I'm afraid I'm going to, stab myself with it. And because sometimes when I'm potting in a hurry, it just, things get rushed and I don't want to stab myself with it. But anyway, I'm going to try to strip back some of these old stuff here for you guys without cutting my finger, because that would be a good idea. Here we go. Here we go. So, if you can see, you've got the roots here. And you've got, shoot, I don't remember the name of it. This is a thing. It has a name. It's a very simple name, but I don't remember the name of it. Sorry, guys. But this is the actual root inside of it. The thing that looks like a root. What's around it, all this right here, is a word that I can't remember. You can look it up if you want to find it. But it just absorbs the, moisture around it. So if it's in Spagnum Moss, then this moss holds a lot of moisture. And it's just, these root encasings here are just going to absorb all the moisture in, and then that prones your roots to rot. So the best way to kind of fix the root rot is I have a spray bottle, and it is 1 part hydrogen peroxide and 10 parts water, I think. I will confirm that, but I'm pretty sure it's 1 part hydrogen peroxide, 10 parts water. And you don't want to spray it on the leaves of the plants, but you can spray it on the roots. And if you spray it on the roots, I use it in the summer in the garden when I know I've overwatered something and it's looking like the roots are rotting. You can see it in the summer, I'm pretty sure it's yellowing leaves is the sign of root rot. But anyway, spray this on your orchids and it will help just on the roots. If they look really worn, if they're looking, you know, like you can see these are, they don't look healthy. You can tell that. But you can tell that they're also really wet. The yellowing is a sign of the wetness. And then here's the root here. You can see this is the encasing, and that there is the actual root. So, I mean, just like regular plant roots, you can tell that's what it looks like. But yeah, so now let me bring the camera over. So as far as the ingredients that I have here, I've got my bark charcoal mix, my Spagnum Moss, and you only need a slight amount of this. You really only want it to be a small percentage of your overall orchid mix. And then this is something new I'm trying. I've never actually tried this before in my orchids. But these are clay pellets. It's called Odla, something like that. I got these from IKEA. I know there's other places you can get them. But I've never actually tried them before. But I think it'd look really cool on top of my orchid. So that's why I'm going to try them. I have used them over the summer with my lotus plants and water lilies, but never for orchids before, nor have I seen it done. So I'm going to let you know if something goes wrong, but don't try it until I tell you if it's good or not. But I think it's going to be a really cool effect. So I am going to pre-soak this because you want it pre-soaked. And while that is soaking, I'm going to put it in just a second. This is an orchid that I went through and I don't know why, but a while back it was dying and I removed all of the peat moss from it. But okay, so that's another thing I want to talk about. Glad I thought about this. This little thing here, if you can see, this was an old bloom stem of my orchid, and it sent off this little baby here. And I've never seen an orchid do this, so I asked a, local gardening lady about it. She was teaching a class, and I was like, hey, do you have any idea why I did that? And she said that it's a kind of last resort for them, like when they're dying and they think there's no other option, so they send off a little baby, like maybe you can live if I die here kind of thing. And I guess that's what it's doing, because it was after a trauma, which it was after I tore all of the roots out. You can see a lot of the roots up here are black. I'm going to end up removing those in just a second, but these roots down here still look good. And the plant looks good, so I'm going to go with it. But I'm pretty excited about this because it's got a little baby root and a bloom node and an actual leaf, 2 leaves. So I was like, that's really cool. Maybe I'll half kill more of my orchids. So don't suggest that, but I thought that was really cool because I've never seen that before. Okay, and the last thing I wanted to mention is that this mix right here, you can't see it very well, but it has perlite in it. And perlite, the bag looks like this, if you can see it. And it's little white pieces. It's just little white pieces, foamy stuff. If you've seen my other videos, then you know that I have used this in mixing my garden soil. And I highly suggest you have some on hand because every gardener needs a bag of perlite for repotting and some of the potting mixes I've gotten, like for my houseplants. If they've not had enough in it, then I've had to add more. And I've had a time finding a potting mix that I like, but I always suggest having a bag of perlite on hand. So I'm going to soak this and we will come right back. Okay, so I've got my orchid mix here, and I've got my bark and charcoal, and I've soaked my Spagnum Moss, and probably could have, you know, squeezed it a little bit more before I put it in here. Actually, that was probably a good idea. I thought I squeezed it more than I did, but you want to make sure you squeeze it really well, or it's just gonna, you know, rot your orchid's roots having too much water. That's much better. You can see how it kind of now a little bit fluffier. So I'm going to add a little bit more peat or perlite, just because that's me. I like extra perlite. And then I'm going to put it in these pots. The best pots to use is something with a drainage hole. Of course, if you don't, well, you really need something with a drainage hole. If you don't have, you know, well, if you don't have any pots you like with a drainage hole, you can use a terracotta pot with a drainage hole, or even a plastic pot like this. As long as it drains well, and if you're happy with it, then it's perfectly fine to use. Trying to mix this around in here a little bit. And the reason the store uses Spagnum Moss, it's just a lot easier to transport something with moss that you don't have to keep wetting than it is to transport something with bark that, you know, dries out a lot quicker. So even though it may be the wrong thing to use, that's still the reason they do it. And they probably will continue to do it like that. So there's one orchid down to pretty much all the good roots. And I don't want to cut too many, but I'm just cutting off the dead ones. Now, some people don't even cut off the dead ones. And they, let's see if I can pull this out. Well, we left a green one in there. It's sad, it's sad. Yeah, this one looks a lot better. You can see that bright green tip there is a new growth. And, I mean, you can even tell that the leaves and everything. This one just looks a lot better. I don't know why. Cut off these old bloom nodes. Now, I usually don't recycle this Spagnum Moss that I take out. But, oh, wrong bucket. I usually don't recycle it. I'm not sure if you could or not. I'm sure you could sterilize it and reuse it if you really wanted to. I mean, of course, you're not going to use it all unless you have a bunch of orchids to repot. And even still, I mean, you need more bark, but yeah, I'm sure there's a way you could reuse it if you really wanted to. Those are the ones I cut. I was about to say, oh no, it's all falling out. All right, so this is just yeah, that's what I was going to say before this. Some people, for the old ones, and then I haven't had any nasty ones in this, they just, instead of cutting off the yellowing and dead pieces, they just strip it. And so you leave the actual root and strip the outer coating like that. I prefer to just cut it. Maybe that's because I just got these new clippers for Christmas and they are awesome, but I mean, I don't know, I'm just kind of a cutter. So, there we go. Second orchid down. And then the pots that I'm using, I mean, in addition to the terracotta and nursery pots, I got these from an estate sale and yard sale. I've actually got 3 semi-matching ones. They're all hand-painted and made in Holland, and I've found that they're actually fairly common. I've seen many of these with the holes, and they are orchid pots, so they're meant for the orchids. And, you know, once you put your medium in here, then it lets a lot of air in, and orchids need a lot of air. I mean, after all, they are naturally grown on tree branches. So, you know, having that air is really important. So that's just the reason for the pots that I'm using. And if you could find a pot with holes, that'd be awesome, but it's not, you know, completely necessary. I just thought these looked really awesome. Hand painted in Holland. I mean, yeah. So, it's just me. Guess I should go ahead and actually put one of these in here. So, I'll start with this little one here. I'm just gonna grab Alright, so got my potting mix with my bark, perlite, sphagnum moss. I'm just going to put a little bit in the bottom. Make sure I have an even mix of everything. And for the orchid. Wow, that is one really long root. This one was really, really happy, wasn't she? Yes, she was. Okay. So I'm just pulling a few of these out of the holes just because I like the look of it. My grandma may say, no, that's not okay, put them back in. And then I'll take them out and do the same thing. But I like the look of it. Well, just broke that one. Maybe we'll just put her back in there. Let's do that. Cool. So now I'm just gonna fill it the rest of the way. Well, not the rest of the way, but a little bit more with all of our stuff here. And try to keep it in the holes. But yeah, I'm gonna grab a little bit more of the moss just to fill the sides a little bit. Yeah, so orchids are awesome, but I've not quite mastered the the care and the reblooming and all that stuff. Now, they don't die until the leaves go crispy. So if you have one and you throw it away after it blooms because it's not blooming, don't, because it's just like any other plant. They have their cycles, and you no need to throw it away if it's gonna rebloom. I can't figure how to get it to rebloom. I think it's, when I read about it before, I think it said you have to put them in a dark area and then like for a certain amount of weeks, like 6 weeks or 9 weeks or something, and then take them out in warm area. But I don't really know. Never got mine to do that. So there's our little orchid in a little pot, nice and happy. And now I'm going to start on these others. So thank you for watching this video. Hold on. I'm gonna do this other one real quick. Stick around. It's the last thing to pot. I'm going to use my pellets now. I was going to put it in this pot, but then I realized that it does not have a drainage hole in the bottom, even though it's got all this up here, and I can't plant anything else in it, because when I water it, then it comes over the sides, and I've got dirt everywhere. So I was going to put my orchid in this, but no drainage hole, so I'm going to pass on this one. It's still going to be my trash can for now, and I'm going to put it back in its original pot after I get rid of this bark, because I've now popped drainage holes in the bottom, and this will be a lot better for it. And now that I've removed all the dead roots, once I put it back in there, it will have plenty of space. A good rule of thumb for actual repotting, like of regular plants, and if you're gardening outside in containers, is you want to repot it to, or whenever you're repotting something, do it like no bigger than 2 inches around the root ball. So if you're repotting a plant with this size root ball, don't do the pot any bigger than, maybe it's an inch. I think it's like an inch or 2 inches around the outside of the pot. So you won't want to put this plant in here, maybe that'd be okay. This would be okay, but maybe not anything bigger, because it's just, at some point it's too big, and then the plant doesn't maximize the root space that it has. Okay, so I'm just throwing this back in here, not throwing it because I'd have it going everywhere, but I'm putting it back in here between the roots, and just trying to get it mostly around it, but you want it to have a lot of air too. And you want to make sure your bark is relatively big, because if the bark is too small, then it compacts, then you don't get enough airflow as is. So I'm just going to do it down to there. Still room all the way around it. Set the plant up right. And I forgot to do this in the others, so I'm going to go back and do it now. But you want to make sure that you put your sticks back in it, because you will need these when it comes time to bloom. And, you know, just better to do it now than later. Use this clamp and set this here. Together. Make sure it's not too tight. Cool. And I'm going to clamp this one just like that. Ta-da! And then you can see this leaf's already withering. She's just gonna die. If you see any kind of, you know, dying plant matter or dead leaves on your plants, definitely remove them, because it just, I mean, this is wasted energy. The plant's putting a lot of energy into breaking it down, and by you go ahead and clipping it off, the plant can use that energy for regrowth instead of the breakdown. So, yes, my little pellets now. I don't know, maybe that looks good. We're gonna see how these go. I may not do a follow-up video, so if you follow my Instagram, then you are probably going to see how this turns out. And if you don't follow my Instagram, then you should follow it, because I do a lot more on my Instagram than I do on my YouTube. Including a daily Saturday video as of right now, and hopefully until spring sometime. So yeah. Anyway, follow my Instagram. It's pretty great. So here's the final product. I think it looks pretty good, especially for an orchid. See, I've got a lot of dust on my leaves. It's really important to clean the leaves of your houseplants. I should have done that already. But there we go. So here's the final product. Beautifully potted orchids that are happy, healthy, and most of all, make us happy, because what's the point of planting if we don't become happy from it? So it's just a natural byproduct of planting anyway. So thank you guys so much for watching. It means a lot to me to have support of people who enjoy my videos. And I'm going to let you know how these Udla clay pellets comes out, because it has a really great aesthetic to it, and I love the look of it. I mean, I don't know how anyone wouldn't love this. So I'm going to let you know how this turns out. I will probably do a follow-up video for those that are interested. If you are, please comment down below, or shoot me a message on Instagram. If you're not following my Instagram, I highly suggest it, because, I mean, it's pretty great. I post a lot more on there than I do on here. I post planting tips and planting videos and educational videos and lots of other stuff. I'm going to do a giveaway soon, so please check that out. And yeah, so thank you guys. 2021 is going to be a great year. I already know it. And I'm really excited to see where it goes. Thank you. From my orchid and I.